So go
I'm
ahead.
I'm
Just
recording.
know that
I know.
we are definitely going to be late because it's 3:30 already.
Um, the reason why, well, the reason why I'm recording this is because
Yeah.
to keep a record, and this is I will be writing this down, but I'm as well, but
It's better for you.
right. And I think the more I talk about it,
The easier it
the
becomes.
easier it becomes.
You seem like you're a lot better talking about it right now
Yeah.
than you were.
Well,
So.
so I'll tell you how what went down. Today is Saturday, May the 4th. And this morning at 7:02, I woke up to um, let the dog out, um, feed him, and um, just let him out. So I did that, and I went back into the bedroom to lay down. And when I did, all of a sudden I just started getting extremely tired. And then all of a sudden I started just having flashes and of hell. And basically it was another uh, trip vision, encounter of hell. And this was actually not my first encounter. There's been, from what I understand, about three other times. But this one by far was the most vivid. And I just, at first, when I started seeing these flashes, I can't really say that there was a lot of emotion. But after all these visions and what I'll call flashes happen, that's when, the first set, it came, I believe, what was it, about three different sets? Couple,
I don't know. I know two.
at least two. But this first set,
The first one was.
and these flashes that I'm going to say, it didn't really, I can't really say it was the exact sequence, because these little experiences kind of actually happen over a period of
An hour?
at least an hour,
About an
hour or so, off and on. But the first thing I saw, and like I said, I knew it was hell. The first set I saw, it was darkness, and um, it was darkness, but I didn't see any flames. So as I began to understand, the Lord was telling me that hell has rooms. There are rooms in hell. And every sin that is committed on earth, every single sin that's committed, there's a room for it in hell. And that everybody that is in hell goes through these rooms to be tormented and tortured. So what I'm going to tell you and tell you about are some of the rooms that I experienced. One of the rooms, like I started to mention, was it was just darkness, and it was almost like a smoky kind of room. It was just black and darkness. And I said, Lord, what is this? And he said, these are people who had committed suicide. And in this room, my attention was driven to, it was a girl. And she had to have been a teenager. She wasn't very old. How I know these things, it's by, I just knew. And there's this girl. She had to be, like I said, she had to be a teenager, and she had long stringy hair, and she kept slitting her wrist. And that's all she would do. She would just keep slitting her wrist, just slitting her wrist. And she would be and there was pain each time. Everybody that is in hell is in excruciating pain. And they're in some sort of torment all the time. There's no break. And then next thing I know, there was another room that I saw. And this room was the torture room. And in this room, there was a lot of, how in history you see different torture devices like, the rack and the Iron Maiden, and just different torture devices. And I just knew, this was a torture room, and I saw quite a few people there in that torture room. I saw all types of torture devices. There's in hell there is no rules to torture. I guess that's why they call it hell. Anything and everything is allowed. And that's especially evident when it came to this next room that I saw. And just kind of a warning, there's some very graphic details that I may get into. So that's just kind of fair warning. This room, it was a rape room. And I saw men and women just being sodomized and just raped. And this was a room where people who were into pornography, and there were porn stars, and not only that, but there are people who were homosexuals, and they were just, I mean, just every way a person can get raped, and even some ways that you could, they were being raped and sodomized, and what was strange about this was that they weren't using any outside instruments. These, I know it doesn't sound like, I know it doesn't sound believable that this could be real. While I was seeing, I didn't think it was real, but I knew it was. But these people were literally being raped and sodomized by demons. And so it's still a little bit difficult. It was hard watching people go through that. And then I went to this saw this other room, and this was it was like a party room, and it was it was set up like a club. It had a DJ booth and everything. And in this room, there were people that were dancing. And I saw that they were dancing on what looked like hot needles and just spikes, actually. They were dancing on hot spikes, and they were forced to dance. Everyone who goes in these rooms, they're forced to do, they don't have a choice. They're forced to do whatever torment they're being tormented with. And these spikes would go through people's feet as they danced. And there would just be excruciating pain. And one thing that I saw that I didn't mention, and was that in the porn star room, that's sexual perversion room, and actually in this room as well, because it was a club setting, there were strippers. And these were people who lived and was stripped and used to strip. And instead of tearing and taking off clothes, they were ripping. They were ripping their flesh. ripping their flesh. And and when they were done ripping their flesh would come back on them, and they were forced to do it again and again and again. And then I went to this one room, and I think this is one of the times where I tried, I would just, I said, Lord, please don't show me anymore. I beg you, please. I can't take it anymore. I can't see anymore. But the Lord said, this is necessary. And that I was to tell and testify to what I saw. And then when I would, it was almost like I would slip into a trance, like and then this particular time I went to this room. I don't know if it was a cell or a room or whatever, but there's this skeleton, and he was like, I don't know, he was like leaning on like something or slab. Maybe I don't know. Maybe this was the torture room. I don't know. I didn't know what the name of the room was. And it was just this person, and he was screaming, and this demon would come up to him, and he put his hands. The demon put his hands inside this man's chest, and he just split him. He just split his chest. And there was such a cry and a scream that came out of that man. And as soon as the demon would rip his chest wide open and just split him open, his chest would grow back and come back together. And the demon would rip him open again, just like you're just pulling something apart. And I said, Lord, what is this? And he said, this man spread division. He spread division. So this man must have known Jesus at one time, because the Bible says that there's a worse torment for those who knew Jesus and went to hell, and that's especially evident in the next person that I saw. It was just another skeleton, but he had eyes. And this demon came up with like a large corkscrew, and he approached this man and put the corkscrew to his eye and began to turn the corkscrew until it would go into the person's eye. And he didn't do it very fast. He did it real slow. And then when the corkscrew could go no further, the demon would slowly pull his eyes out with that corkscrew. And I said, Lord, what is this? He said, this man was a false prophet. See, it's a prophet's job to see. In fact, when you look at in the Old Testament, they call prophets seers. And the Bible says that God does nothing in the earth except he shows his prophet. So it's a prophet's job to see what's going on in the spirit, no matter what it is. And it's his job to warn the people and tell the people what he saw. And if you don't do it, and also if you start seeing and prophesying false things, you're tormented in this manner. And then I saw, I went to another room, and this room, it was, and I knew what this room was before I went in, but this room that I went into next, it was for abusers. And in this room I saw this man, and this demon was just striking this man in the head with such force that it would literally cave the man's skull in. And this demon would beat this man in the head to the point where it was, not only did he break every bone in that skull, but it was like the skull was flattened. And as soon as the skull was flattened, the skull would come back like nothing had ever happened, and the demon would go back to beating him again. And I knew in my spirit that this man abused his wife and abused his kids physically. The rooms, these set of rooms that the Lord was telling me, these set of rooms, including this room, he said, these are reap what you sow rooms. And that was one of those rooms. Another room that I saw, it was kind of strange, these next two rooms. The first room that I saw, it was called excess. This room of excess. And in this room, I saw a table, a wide table, wooden table. And they were fat, and excuse the term, But there were fat people sitting at this table, and there were skinny people sitting at this table. And the fat people, they were forced to eat. And they ate and they ate and they ate, and they would beg to stop, make it stop, but they were not allowed to stop eating. And they kept eating and eating, and they would throw up. But then they would still have to eat. They couldn't stop. And then those were the fat people, and then the skinny people, they just threw up. And they just kept throwing up and kept vomiting and kept vomiting and kept vomiting. And it was painful because they couldn't stop. They weren't allowed to stop. Next room I saw, it was another really strange room, because this room it was I saw a woman in this room, and this room was it was messy, and it was cluttered, and it was disorganized. And this woman would try to clean this room, but the more she would try to clean the room, the more disorganized and cluttered and messy the room got. And this one was strange because I didn't perceive any physical pain. And this puzzled me. I said, Lord, what is this? He said, this woman is suffering psychologically. And I was like, okay. And he began to explain some more. He said, there is, the condition of people who had obsessive compulsive disorders. And then, see, all disorders, all type of mental disorders and things, they're not God. They're not godly. They don't come from God. And people aren't born with these things. They're forced on them by demons. And so not only do people, it's a psychological torment, but not only that, but there are people who come in those type of rooms, and they're just dirty, they're untidy, they're disorganized all the time. And I asked the Lord about this, and He said, and I asked, Lord, why is this room even here? And He said, because I'm not the author of confusion. He said, and I think this really kind of struck home to me. but he said that whenever a person is comfortable living in a place where there is mess, I'm not talking just like life mess, I'm talking about like physical mess. You know, they're comfortable with a house being dirty and things just not being organized. That's a spirit, and the root of that is confusion. So whenever there is a person is comfortable living in a messy house and stuff, it's because there's a root of confusion, and it manifests itself. The next room that I saw was it was like a movie theater, and there are many rooms like this. And I looked and I saw there were people, and they were chained into these chairs. They were chained into these chairs, and I was looking on what they were watching, and they were watching a horror movie. And there, like I said, there are many rooms like this. And in this room, like I said, they were watching a horror movie, and every sensation that was on the screen, they would feel it. And it was excruciating, and the Lord gave me this revelation about that. He said that you got to be careful with what you watch. He said that all these movies, these horror movies and TV shows, a lot of these TV shows originate here. And what happens is these people who are watching these shows, they are like a test audience. And it's not just horror movies, it's a lot of different movies and TV shows. And what they would do is they would originate here in hell, and these people would be forced to watch these things, and then if because they were trying to get a desired outcome. And once they got the desired outcome that they wanted, they would release these things into the earth. But if they didn't get the desired outcome, they wouldn't release it until they were ready to release it. And what I was looking at, the horror movie that I was looking at, it's not just movies, it's TV shows as well. But the movie that they were watching, it was like one of those Saw movies. And so and again, like I said, they're a lot they originate from hell. And then I went and I went to this other room. And this room was called the murder room. And this was a very, very, very large room. Very large room. And the Lord, and what I saw was there was this, one of the things that I saw in that room was there was this man who was being stabbed. But he can't die. He just be stabbed with the knife over and over and over and over again. And going back, before I go there, going back to the moving room, the Lord was telling me it's, not only horror movies, but you got serial killer movies and, like I said, all different types of movies, cartoons, TV shows. So, you really gotta be careful about what you watch, and I'll get to that later. But going back to the murder room, this was a very large room, and there were a lot of people in this room. And the Lord said, this murder room is not just for people who physically committed the act of murder. But he said that everybody who hates their brother or hates somebody or doesn't forgive, they're guilty of murder. And it was weird because one person I saw, it was like they said in their mind, I hate this person. I wish they don't even need to be born, and they should just be wiped off the face of the earth. And that person was the one that was in hell. And the Lord was telling me, a lot of times what will happen is when a person says stuff like that, a picture is put in their mind on how they should die. And that's the way they are tortured in that murder room. And he said that, again, a lot of people, are in there. Just for they may not have actually committed the act of murdering somebody, but they hated somebody. They wouldn't forgive. Unforgiveness is along the same lines of murder. And then we went out of that room, and then I saw it was like a wide open space, and I saw there were people that weren't in their pits, because what happens is demons would take people out of the pits that they're being at the flames of the fire, and they would be dragged and taken to these rooms. And everybody goes through every single one of these rooms. And I'll explain that later. But these people that I saw, they weren't in pits, but they were running, and they were running scared. There was this one person, he would run, and there would be demons chasing him. And the demon wouldn't catch him. It was like the demon was toying with him. And I saw quite a few people like that. They were just running and running and running. And I said, Lord, what is this? And he said, well, these are people who are overcome with the spirit of fear. And that transitioned into another room, what I call the phobia room. And basically, I mean, it is exactly what it says. Whatever you were afraid of here on earth, when you were taken into that room, whatever you were afraid of, it would manifest itself and just terrorize a person. And the last room, and I think this is the hardest one for me to grasp. I went into this room, and the Lord said that the people in this room are people who desired and wanted a sex change. And people who got sex changes, and not only those who got sex changes, but those who would applaud and agree and say, the sex changes. And this one was especially hard for me to grasp, because when I saw men and women, and then next thing you know, they would transition. Like if they were a woman, they would change into a man, and if they were a man, they would change into a woman. And each change was excruciating. And there would be times where the parts would get mixed up. And every time they changed, it was excruciatingly horrible. And then, one of the last things, or one of the things I saw, which it looked, this one, I was like, am I sure I'm seeing this? But I saw a man in these flames, and all I could see was his shadow. And I kept hearing, "Dear Mama." And my spirit said this man was Tupac Shakur. And I just kept hearing, "Dear Mama, dear Mama." There's a song that he sings called "Dear Mama." And he was just in so much pain. I mean, just engulfed in it was like, not only was he in the flame, but it looked like he was standing in molten lava. And it was strange, and I asked, and when these visions stopped ending, it was, just the emotions and things. I was almost nearly unconsolable. My wife would tell you that. It took me a long time just to get out of bed, because I was just so much, it was just a despair. And if I started getting sleepy, I would get scared because I was afraid that I would end up seeing more things. But I did see one more thing, and this was actually very interesting. The Lord began to explain to me that every deed that is done, every sin that is committed gets recorded. But then he showed me two things. The first person I saw was, well, what Jesus was telling me was that when sin is recorded, there's a demon that records what you did, the sin that you did. And when he records it, he goes to hell and he presents it. And it's written, and your sin is written in a book in hell. In fact, actually, I saw this demon, and he was around someone who was not saved. And this demon was just, he would stay with the person all day. Just like, almost like you're walking, he's really close to this person. And everything that he did, that demon recorded. And then at the end of the day, when the person would go to sleep, he would go to hell, just almost like, just leisurely, it's almost like he wasn't in much of a hurry. And he would go to hell and he would present what he wrote before Satan, and it would be written in a book. And then I saw another person, and this man was saved. This person was saved. And the demon couldn't get close to him because this person was surrounded by angels, so he had to kind of look afar off. But as soon as that person sinned, the demon would rush to hell as fast as he could. And there would be times where he would get to where Satan was, to present what he wrote down, and there would be nothing on the page. And the Lord Jesus explained to me, when a person repents of sin, it's gone. There's no record of it. And I saw different things with that. And I saw when this happened, the demon that presented a blank page, he got punished. And punished severely. But then, I don't think I told you this, but then I asked, what happens to a person when they don't forgive, and they bring up other people's sin? And he said, well, that's recorded. And everything that happens to that person after that is recorded. And it doesn't go away until they forgive. Even if that person asks God to forgive them of different sins, if there's any unforgiveness in their heart, that sin remains. And the Lord told me that every sin that is recorded in Satan's book, that's what's used to torment and torture them when they get to hell. Was there anything else I said?
No, that's it.
So, you know, when I see this, when I saw this, it really made me think about, you know, God was really not messing around when he said that broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many that walk therein. For straight is the gate, and narrow is the way that leads to life, and there are few that find it. But in also looking at this, it really makes me appreciate the grace of God. It really does. I think sometimes we don't think about it. I think we take the grace of God for granted. You know, we equate grace with time. You know, that if we just, you know, God gives us grace so that we have time to, you know, if we want to repent later and do this and do that. You know, and I think, you know, and that's not true. Grace gives you the ability to get right what's not right. And, you know, and then it also, seeing that it makes me really appreciate what Jesus did. You know, Jesus, you know, died so that we don't have to go through all that sometimes. You know, when I one of the thoughts that I had in my mind was, you know, why even do this? Why, you know, why hell? Why does hell even have to exist? You know, because it's so to say it's nightmarish. There are no words to describe hell. No words. But, you know, we're very fortunate in that as we are still alive, if there's anything that we need to get right, we have the chance to get things right. And that's the love of God. You know, God loved us so much that He gave Jesus, that if we believe and walk according to His ways, we won't perish, but we'll have everlasting life. So that's my testimony.